Hey guys, so I am going to read through some of this Discord that I had previously made videos on, but I'm kind of condensing stuff now that we got all this news and we know what happened. I'm kind of trying to pick out pieces that are more relevant to what's going on. And since they're older videos, a lot of people haven't seen them. And now there's a lot more interest on the case. So, anybody that may have missed some of this Discord, I think it's interesting. I spent a lot of hours reading through David's Discord trying to find any relevant stuff. So, that's what I'm doing now. I'm going back through it. So, here it is. So, I'm starting here February 20th, 2023 at 12:21 a.m. Viper shares a screenshot from earlier that day where Viper calls David a bottom and David responds by this guy going shh. And Giovanni says, I think he typoed, is supposed to be vulgarity. He says, no poetic vulgarity on Spotify. And then David says, got hacked and it was up for a day or two, waiting for a specific something to happen before I drop it. So this deleted user posts this attachment, which is a picture of this guy, right? And David responds and says, who is this and why is he not kissing me right now? The attachment he's responding to about who is this and why is he not kissing me right now is the picture right there. So that is who David is saying. Who is this and why is he not kissing me right now? So is David bi or wonder? I mean, it's just kind of a odd comment, I would say. I mean, I guess it's not odd. It's just kind of out of nowhere, like kind of like random, because I mean, has he talked about his sexuality before? In this conversation, he's talking about being asexual. Now he's wanting this guy to kiss him. I mean, he just makes things up. Like, I feel like he just isn't honest with anybody, even with himself. A. Darian says, David, I'll turn gay for you. And in response to David saying, who is this and why is he not kissing me right now? Sid says, help. And in response to David talking about why is he not kissing me right now? Your 11AH says, I love you, David. And Viper posts that post from earlier where David says, degrade me. And Davey says, David could Rizzo up my grandma. And David said, for real. Sid says, Riz up my mom. She's single and ready to mingle. And Log says, David, can you say hi to my mom? And David says, hi, mom. And Log says, thank you, for real. Giovanni said, yo, David, how many bitches you got now after music? David says, none. And David says, probably why my music is so sad. In response to Giovanni saying, how many bitches you got now after music, Kanji said, someone didn't watch the Twitch live. So that makes me think that at the Twitch live that he had some girls on it or girl, I don't know, more than one girl, whatever. But I mean, look what Kanji's saying. Giovanni's saying, yo, how many bitches you got now after music? David's acting like he doesn't have any, but Kanji's like talking to Giovanni like, oh, you must not have seen the Twitch live because he had some. That's what I'm taking from it. What do you guys agree? And it makes me wonder, was Celeste on this Twitch live? Because we know she's done some lives with him. Like, who was on the Twitch live? I wish we could get our hands on some of those Twitch lives. In response to David saying none about how many bitches he got, Giovanni says lies. And in response to David saying probably why my music is so sad, Optimized Forkcock says, I crave for David's sperm. In response to David saying none, that he has no bitches, deleted user says, I laughed my ass off. I'm so sorry. So they must be seeing things that David's a liar and he does have other girls that he's messing around with and they're seeing it and he's lying about it, trying to play this innocent role for some reason. David says, I'm so serious, bro. Girls my age are retarded. Not all, but most. And then Sid responds to that and says, men my age are worse, David. And then Davey responds and says, real. I love Danny Phantom says, bro, I love you so much, David. Simp says, nah, it's the guys, I swear. Period says, oh my god, bruh. Giovanni says, maybe not, but clearly you got men after you. So if you guys remember that message right there, that post that David wrote, I'm so serious, bro. Girls my age are retarded. That got passed around from video to video, and I'm guilty of it too. All of us thinking that he was saying that he liked younger girls and that he was talking about girls his age are so retarded. Like, I like the younger girls, like minors. So that definitely got taken out of context, which you will see. He's talking about him wanting older women, okay? And you'll see it as we read on. So David responds to Sid saying, men my age are worse, David, by saying swear. Andre says, damn, you trying to be like Landon and go for the older women? And Yes says, I'm a man, but we can still F. And then David responds to Andre's, damn, you trying to be like Landon and go for older women? David responds, definitely. So there you go. Right there confirms that statement he said was actually meant that he wanted older women. So he's saying girls his age are retarded. They're too young. He wants older women. No, I'm just saying that's what he's saying in this post. I think he's full of it. Obviously, actions speak louder than words. And who's he going for? All the younger women. Who does supposedly he has a phone full of CSAM, CP, kids, past relationships. I guess there's, more than one victim, all younger. So I'm not saying that he's being honest, but I'm just saying that's what he was trying to say in his post, which he's lying. I mean, at least his actions say something completely different, that he goes for younger women. Okay, let's continue with the Discord. Sid says they all expect girls to have the biggest boobs and butt and then be thick in the thighs while also being less than 100 pounds with flat stomach. Like, let's keep it a buck. And David said, our generation just sucks. Giovanni says, I kind of feel bad for you, David, because now it's just harder to find someone who truly loves you, not because you're famous. Maybe you should make a song about that. And Kanji responds to David's Our Generation Sucks with, Bro, what generation doesn't? And then Davey says, should make a song out of that. And David says, already did. Rat says, I love you. Giovanni says, wait, which one? And David says, it's on the second project. And then David says, people our age just don't appreciate love at all. And Sid says, seriously, bro, they all cheat or only want sex. Huh, it's kind of crazy now. Now we're seeing that you were projecting. You were the one that only wanted sex. Supposedly there's text messages with you and Celeste calling you out for all you wanting with her with sex. She's the one saying that she wants more. She wants more. She wants the love that you're claiming that you want, and that you don't like younger girls because they don't know about love. Yet Celeste is wanting something more from a relationship like love, and you're the one that only wants sex. You're the one that wants a superficial, not love relationship. Okay, back to the Discord messages. And then a deleted user says, depends who you're with, to be honest. Viper says, that's a bar. Make a song about it. Giovanni says, honestly, one of the ups and downs of becoming famous, And David says, not everything is about that. I'm not even famous, LMAO. And Andre says, to us you are. And Sid says, you famous in my eyes, Pookie Bear. And in response to David talking about people our age don't appreciate love at all, Rat says, I love you. You amazing. Now go to bed. It's past your bedtime. And then I love Danny Phantom says, hello, kitty girl damage for real. And deleted user puts that face, like, what is it, like a worried face? And she shares a screenshot. And this screenshot of a post from earlier says, I missed you so much I couldn't handle myself from crying because you were there for me and looked out for me. I missed you so much. You don't know how much I cried when you blocked me because you were the only person that I wanted to talk to. And you still are. I love you so much. I don't know what I'll do without you in my life right now. I was nothing when you blocked me. I cut myself for days after that one single day. I just couldn't handle myself because you meant so much to me. I don't know if I'm still an option to be your girlfriend since you're close to another girl, but just know I missed you so much, Landon, with the little Hello Kitty emoji. So I guess the person writing this is Landon, but I don't know who she's writing this to. Is this to David? I don't know, but it's kind of interesting if it is. And David said, that's like the worst mindset ever. Rat says, how? And David says, I'm talking about always wanting attention. Need a girl that likes to have deep, physiological conversations for real. And I think he meant psychological, but he wrote physiological. Sid says, guys, I feel bad because I be DMing David a lot. It's because he be cool and funny as hell. I feel so bad sometimes. David says, feeling bad for DMing someone is crazy. And then Rat says, David, when you get a girlfriend, don't let your songs turn sappy. And David said, there's a ton of love songs on the project coming up. And Sid responding to David's feeling bad for DMing someone is crazy. Sid says, I have anxiety and everyone here criticizes me for dick riding. So I always feel bad and annoying. Andre said, David, you the realest MF. And David says, I hate making corny music. And Period says, literally. And Yes says, "For real, you should stop." And then David said, "So when's Hear a Love Song? It's peak trust." What? So when's Hear a Love Song? It's peak trust. So remember, we're February 20th, 2023, 2:31 a.m. David said, "Nobody can riz me." And deleted user says, "Uh-huh." Kanji says, "Asexual king." And David says, "As F, 4 Fs with some painted nails." Arar says, "You mean you have no riz?" And Denji says, "Challenge?" Question mark. And David says, "Nah, I have riz, trust me." And Davy says, "Test it on me." And David says, "I'm the best romantic poet there is, pal." And Period says, "Spill some Riz right now." And David says, "I'm not showing y'all Riz." And deleted user says, "'Cause it don't exist." And Period says, "Have you rejected someone before?" And then David responds, "Shoot, I didn't get a screenshot of whatever our sticker was, but whatever it was," he says, "Need to cut my hair again for this Riz." And then I did get this though. The next attachment is him responding to this picture of himself that Yes posted, and David says LMAOOO. Omar says, "Canonically, all of these David stickers die." And David says, "Oh my God, you're right." David says, "I don't know how I've gotten worse as I age. I'm having a glow down." And Lamp says, "David, check DMs, bitch." And David says, "Y'all want to see 2021, David?" Period says, "Yes." And he says, "Ready? This pic I'm about to send you, bro. Oh my God." And it's this pic right here with the cash in his hand.
Bro, does anybody else have that phase of their life that if you ever got famous, you'd have to scrub it off the internet with a steel wool sponge? This right here, that's Cash David. You don't know him, but I know him. Before the albums, before the music, before TikTok was a thing, there was Cash David. And Cash David was a gangster. He was a gangster. Bro, I'm telling you right now, I don't know what happened. I don't know what I was dealing with in my life. I can't even remember what happened. Bro, like, I was homeschooled. I was in the suburbs. I probably took this picture, like, before church, too, which is, I'm so sorry, Lord, Heavenly Father, forgive me. But, like, I don't even know why I felt the need to share this, but like, hey, if you are a fan of mine and you have been on this journey for a minute and you just wanted like a little bit of lore before I drop this project, here y'all go.
Okay, so now we're jumping up to 3:14 a.m. David says, "Oh my God, we still got to do the E-date stream." Deleted user says, "What if like we switched bodies, but you didn't know?" David says, "Being a girl for a date, like that one Scooby-Doo movie." And David says, "I'm not participating in the E-date. You guys are." And Rylab says, "Nah, you'll be dating me," with two devil faces. Levin, I'll just call him Levin, says, "I can too, question mark. I'm a minor." And deleted user says, "I'm gonna be taking a edict." Levin says, "Cause my Riz game on top." And deleted user says, "David, what if I write you a Wattpad fan fiction?" And David says, "LMAO, do it." And in response to David saying, "You guys are about e-dating," Omar says, "What does this mean?" And David said, "I'm just hosting the E-date. I'm not E-dating." And Sid says, "Me and Lamp co-host, question mark?" In response to David saying he's just hosting the E-date. Deleted user says, "That's disgusting." Deleted user says, "Can we have E-sex though if we wanted?" Viper says, "I'm going to go to sleep. Good night, children." Deleted user says, "If it's the same state, I'll E-date." David says, "We a cult for real." And deleted user says, "But if it's not, I'm good." Layla says, "I'm very scared of this fan base." And deleted user says, "Scare some bitches. Oh my God," with the skull face. And then Lamp has a picture. I don't know if it's him or just somebody else. It's a little kid though. And a lot of these people will say they're minors, so I don't know if they're just messing around or they're serious. I'm sure some of them are serious, and I mean, it's sick because I mean, now like learning the history of Discord, it's just, ugh, I would never let my kids on it. And I didn't even realize until this case, really, how dangerous it is for kids to be on Discord. Anyway, so Lamp sends I don't know if that's a picture of him with a little kid saying, caption, "Send nudes." Deleted user says, "Good night." David says, need cult name. And then David says, we need to get Billie Eilish in the cord for real. Viper, in response to David saying, need cult name, he says 4S. Rylab says, big D's, please. So these are people's ideas for cult names. Eric DK says, feet magnets. Omar says, big D's. Oh my God. David says, then our mission is complete. And then this person over here, Star or whatever the name is, says, talk to Justin and tell him to get her in here. Talking about Billie Eilish. And David says, nah, you talk to him. I'm scared. Star says, we all are. Now, what was he doing in the streets of Houston? David said he was pursuing his passion of becoming the best DJ in the world. Then David says, EDP is still alive. And period says DVD David X La Rosalia. And David says yes. I guess it's saying David and La Rosalia. David says, I would let Rosalia do anything to me. Everything, he says. In response to everything, deleted user puts 3 dots. Eric says, aren't you underage? Talking to David, because at this moment he's only 17, I think. And then in response to Eric's, aren't you underage? David says, I don't care. You would too. Quit judging. So this is Rosalia. This is who they're talking about right now. Where David said he would let her do whatever he wants, or whatever she wants to him, or whatever. So, what is she? A Spanish singer-songwriter. I never even heard of her. But that is her. Oh, here's her Instagram. Oh, somebody's Instagram with pictures of her on it. Deleted user says, he won't be underage in a few months. And deleted user says, y'all won't hate on David for liking older women, but hate on me. Andre says, right. And Star says, so you're a moto poppy? And David says, I guess so. Hey, bring me the juice. And then deleted user says, saying I'm going to get groomed and shit. Then David says he likes older women. No one says shit. David says, because I literally turn 18 next month. Deleted user says, well, I'm 16. I can date an 18-year-old. And David says, I can finally date 60-year-olds. And then in response to David saying, because I literally turn 18 next month, deleted user says, out of Lamps League in a month. So basically they're saying either Lamps likes minors or Lamps is a minor. I don't know. Because Lamps, they go back and forth where somebody will call somebody like, you're a minor, and then it's like this game. I don't know who's being serious and who isn't, but you'll see that coming up. I don't know if it'll be in this video, but if you watch all these as timeline videos, you'll see. And in response to David saying, I can finally date 60-year-olds, deleted user says, get out. And then now remember, these deleted users can be different people in one thread. Like there could be a couple deleted users. Now reading through a bunch of these, I got a feel for who some of them are on not every post, because there could be more than one deleted user in a thread. But some of these deleted users are some of the big ones that are in conversations with David and stuff. At least the conversations I pulled is Kylie's one of them that's a deleted user. And shoot, what was the other one? I might have to wait till I get to it. And then a deleted user says, they hating because I said since I'm 16, I'd date a 19-year-old. And Eric says, I'm 13. I can date 6-year-olds. Abby says, nothing stopped you before. And David said, that's true. Let her cook. And then David says, need to download Tinder right now. Period said, someone said that girl in the MV is your cousin, David. And David said, she has a boyfriend too. And deleted user says, how is David still awake, dog? David and Sid go to sleep. And Lamp says, David, you single? Question mark. And David says, do I look like I'm in a relationship? And deleted user says, what if you were in like that secret relationship shit? And David said, that sucks. Who does that? It's crazy because he's the one that does that. He ends up doing that with Celeste. It's so crazy that he acts like, oh yeah, who does that? You'll see him talking about like, oh, if I had a girlfriend, I'd be posting all the time about her. Yeah, right. You kept Celeste a secret. Andre says, when bro gets in a relationship, he gonna write lovey-dovey shit. And in response to David saying that sucks, who does that? Deleted user says, probably you. It makes me wonder if this deleted user is Celeste. Now remember, I'm still getting comments under my videos of people saying, the deleted user Celeste. The deleted user Celeste. The deleted user is not always Celeste. And a lot of these people, I don't know why they think every deleted user comment in Discord is Celeste, and that's not true. There's a million people who delete their profiles. So anybody that was commenting in David's Discord that deleted their profile is gonna show up as a deleted user. There's a bunch of them. So not all of the deleted users are Celeste. You gotta take the context clues and try to figure it out. You can't always figure out which one Celeste is, okay? Sometimes you can. Sometimes you could tell, like a lot of the times I could tell when it's Kylie too. Or sometimes people will screenshot a message that just happened in the Discord that you could see, and they'll do it in the moment when it happens, which it's before the person deletes their profile. So it'll say the name of the person, and then you could tell who it is. So there's different ways you could tell, but not all the time. So this one maybe or may not be Celeste. I was just thinking it's just kind of crazy that this person is like calling him out, saying probably you, and that's exactly what he does with Celeste. So, knowing that they did know each other back in October of 2022, because we have that Discord interaction between them back then, it makes me wonder if they started a relationship back then and he's been keeping her secret. And is that Celeste saying that? Now, as far as the charges, it has the date September 2023 is when the charges start, but that doesn't mean that the relationship couldn't have been before that. That's just when they could prove it. Okay, back to the Discord messages. And somebody else says LA people, and David responds to the probably you saying no, no, and I'm sorry, which is also previously Carp says, David, don't lie to us. You better be single. And deleted user says FM. David says, trust me, if I get a girl, my Instagram would turn into hers. I'd be posting her every day. Well, no, it's like you keep him secret. Liar. I mean, at this point, he probably thought that he would, right? And then circumstances happen where you have to keep it secret. And, yep. So he says, I'd be posting her every day. And Viper says, this is the realest shit I've ever read. Which he's talking about the comment where he said if he did get a girl, his Instagram would turn into hers. Rylab says, get a girl then, to David. And David says, I can't find nobody. And Lamp says, me? Question mark. And deleted user says, bro, you got millions of fans that love your sexy ass. Just choose one. And he says, I'm not dating any of y'all. They gotta be away from this Discord. Far, far away. And then David says, someone better be my wingman. And deleted user says, I'll be your wing woman. And David says, find me someone in LA for real. And Star says, do you think you'll pull a Givian December 11th? And David says, yes. If you want to read who Givian is and what they were referring to, go ahead and pause it and read. And Rylab says, David, this guy named Rylab just called. I think he want to talk to you. And David does a running girl. Looks like a girl with a little smoke behind her, like she's running away. Okay, so we're going to skip forward to 4:08 a.m. the same day, though. Levin says, we all depressed, huh? Omar says, have you heard David's music? And Levin says, no shit. And Log says, I only riz up Latinas. And David says, this is so real. For me, it's white girls. Which that statement right there is so odd because in every music video, it's all like Hispanic and Latino girls seems like what he goes for. Kind of crazy that he says that because they're talking about that specifically where Log says, I only riz up Latinas. And David said, this is so real. For me, it's white girls. So crazy. So he's talking about liking older women, white girls, which his actions show the opposite. He goes for young girls and seems like Hispanic and Latina girls. At least that's what he has in his music videos. Celeste. I'm not sure if more victims come out what their ethnic background is going to be, but I mean, we know he likes younger girls, and Celeste wouldn't be considered a white girl. I think she was a Latina. I mean, maybe I'm wrong. Maybe she was Hispanic, but I don't know. Definitely wouldn't be what he's saying right here, what kind of girls he goes for. Andre says, you need flavor, dog. And deleted user has these skeletons because I'm guessing that she's probably not white. And Log says, so real, David. And Levin does a sticker of David. Hag says, I riz up all girls. Abby says, because he thought it was cute and it fell off. And Andre said, what's your favorite color? And David says, red. So then in response to David saying that For me, it's white girls. Yes, post this picture with him and a white girl. And then Andre says, bet, damn, you short as F. David says, where dis you get that? Oh, so he's talking about the person that posted that picture. He's saying, where did you get that? Meat Muncher said, David, how tall are you? And Andre said, take your vitamins. And Log, in response to where did you get that? Log says, she tagged you on Instagram. David said, now imagine the court is responsible for my unaliving. And Levin says, that image, how tall are you, bro? And Star says, I'm 5'4", and he was like maybe 1 or 2 inches taller, y'all. For real, for real. And David does 3 dots. And Log says, yo, if David does have an aunt and bro is actually an active member, that would be crazy. And David said, what does this even mean? And Period says, so what you guys do for Valentine's? David said, nothing. I was lonely. And Period says, I could have changed that, shaking my head. Fridge says, I'll be your Valentine. In response to Period saying, I could have changed that, shaking my head, David says, Coco, that's a no-no. And Period says, I want to burn them CDs. And then to him, David saying, Coco, that's a no-no. Period says, LMAOS. And Abby says, maybe if you liked my cat on a burrito, you wouldn't have been lonely. And David says, I'm going to steal it. And Abby says, reply to my DM. And Deleted User says, see, this is why I'm telling you, go get counseling and pull women. And David said, how is counseling going to help? And Deleted User says, they'll give you insights and stuff so you can improve that LRIS. So now we're skipping to May 6, 2023 at 1:49 a.m. David says, who want to go on a date? Minor says, me, BBG. Deleted User says, I'm a minor. And Deleted User says, David, a pedo. Minor says, so this is, don't get confused because one person said I'm a minor and then there's a person's name, Minor, Miner. So, okay, so Minor says, isn't he 17? Never mind. Deleted User says, David, no. And David says, Ella, I ain't ask you, stupid. So that means one of the deleted users, if there's more than one, it's hard to tell sometimes when there's a few comments because like sometimes I feel like there is more than one deleted user in a conversation and sometimes it's hard to tell, but we at least know one of the deleted users, his name is Ella. So sometimes you could get a feel from, people tagging the people or talking to the people, they'll say their name or whatever. So I don't know if these two are both the same person. And then also that's the same person. Probably, I'm guessing this is all Ella, where she says, I'm a minor, David a pedo, and David no. And that's why he says, Ella, I didn't ask you, stupid. And she says, you asked everybody, meaning me. Minor says, Cal wants to kill you. And Deleted User says, David, let's go on a date. And David said, you're going to make me KMS, unalive myself. And Deleted User says, good. And she says, she or he, I think it's a she because I think it's Ella, says, ban Landon. Drop a song about that. And David said, Diol Sui. And Period said, is it true that Near knows your little brother? And David said, who the F is Near? And when I was reading this a few days ago, I was wondering if they were mistaken and they were trying to put Neo, if it was supposed to be Neo and they just typo or something. I don't know. Maybe not, but maybe, because maybe that's why David doesn't even know who they're talking about, because who's Near? And Period says, he claims you and him are best friends. And Deleted User says, I'm going to be front row just for you, David. And Period says, he goes to your house apparently. Deleted User says, David, me and you date after the show. And then David, in response to Period saying he goes to your house apparently, he says, I don't invite people to my house. Period says, can't trust no one. And David says, thought you would have learned that already. And David said, who want to go on a date? And Inglesi says, yes. And Huz says, drop the song with Kyler. And so now we're skipping to August 19th, 2023. Sophia says, me and YK are just friends now. And David says, e-dater. And Deleted User says, like you? And David says, I've never had a girlfriend. I'm a man of God. And Deleted User says, real. And Log says, God said you can't have a girlfriend? And Sociopath says, e-dating is crazy. Previous e-dater. And David says, LMAO. Sophia responds to David saying that he's never had a girlfriend because he's a man of God. She says, David, Kylie is single. Why don't you two date? E-dating question mark. And David says, I'm asexual. Deleted user says, David Anthony Burke is fake, LMAO. And just for you guys that don't know what asexual is, let me read a definition of that. Okay, so let's just read asexual. So it says, an asexual person does not experience sexual attraction. They are not drawn to people sexually and do not desire to act upon attraction to others in a sexual way. Unlike celibacy, which is a choice to abstain from sexual activity, asexuality is an intrinsic part of who we are. Just like the other sexual orientations, asexuality does not make our lives any worse or better. We just face a different set of needs and challenges than most sexual people do. There is a considerable diversity among the asexual community in the needs and experiences often associated with sexuality, including relationships, attraction, and arousal. Asexuality is a growing subject of research in psychology, sexology, and other academic fields. While estimates for the asexual proportion of the population are limited and may vary, the most widely cited figure is that we are roughly 1% of the population. Okay, there's more to it, but I just wanted to at least give a quick little definition. Okay, so let's get back to okay, where do we leave off? So David said, I've never had a girlfriend. I'm a man of God. Sophia says, David, Kylie is single. Why don't you two date? E-dating. David says, I'm asexual. So let's go back to the date of this charge, September 7th, 2023. He's saying he's asexual August 19th, 2023. So less than a month before they could prove that he SA'd Celeste, he says he's asexual. What a liar. Because just because this date's 9/7/2023, I'm sure it started before then, at least with David. I mean, this is just, there's probably some reason they could prove this date in particular. I mean, that's her birthday, but it doesn't mean that his SA didn't start before that. And I'm sorry, less than a month before that, you're not freaking asexual. And then all of a sudden, in less than a month, you SA somebody? No. So I don't know why he's saying that, if he thinks he is, or he knows he's lying, or he's trying to get some points in some area. I have no idea. But that deleted user, the one deleted user that keeps calling him out, it makes me wonder if it is Celeste, because she's calling him out a bunch for his crap. Deleted user says, David Anthony Burke is fake, LMAO. And Philo says, last girl I talked to wasn't ready to be in a relationship. And David said she lied. In response to David saying he's asexual, Sociopath says, me too. And Tiny says, don't lie to yourself. And the symbol, Yayo, in response to David being asexual, says, go off, queen. And Dre says, oh, isn't that when you like animals and shit? And, which, no, that's not. And deleted user says, David don't want me. Sophia said, is this true, David? In response to Dre saying, isn't that when you like animals? David said, LMAO. And then David says, I'm in love with Haley Williams. Okay, now let's look up who Haley Williams is. So we know, I mean, I guess it doesn't matter, but if some of you guys are curious, at least you could just see everything in one video and not have to leave the video to look up things. Type in Haley Williams and this girl comes up. I guess that's her. She's a American singer-songwriter. She's the lead vocalist and founding member of the rock band Paramore. Oh, I've heard of Paramore. Oh, okay. Ah, I see. And then Jabby says, you aren't romantically interested in people with crying face? Yayo says, I'm in love with David Anthony Burke. And then David has 3 crying faces. Sophia says, Dave, thoughts about you and Kylie dating? Question mark. And David says, banned. So I don't know if he's saying like banning Sophia for saying that or banning Kylie. I don't know why he said that. Deleted user says, never happening. So we know Kylie is one of the deleted users. So I don't know if it's this one right here that's saying never happening or not. Probably, I'm guessing. Anyway, in response to David's band, Sophia says, "See this deleted user?" So it probably is Kylie. That's the deleted user right there because she's saying, like, "See, look, this isn't, it's not going to happen." And deleted user says, "Yeah, guys, me and David never happening. I know that." And log says, "He only likes white girls." And deleted user says, "Nah, because what's dark hair, brown skin, love that melanin." And Yeo says, "Thoughts on Latinas?" question mark. And David says, "They've played me every time, so I don't know at the moment." It's kind of crazy though that he's supposedly hasn't had a girlfriend, no experience, but yet saying that Latinas played him every time. And that's also kind of interesting because, his choices, who he surrounds himself with, who he dates, and his music videos. All Latina type, Mexican, Spanish, like that type of girls, right? So I wonder if he has this deep seated, like, anger towards them for some reason for playing them. There might be one in particular. Anyway, let's continue here. And David says, "I want a white girl from Ohio." Oh my God, I'm a white girl from Ohio. So log posts that Discord message that I had just read previously in this video where David says, "This is so real for me, it's white girls." Yeah, I think she's like calling him out, like, wait a minute. First of all, you say basically it's white girls that you keep going back to or whatever that are you're interested in. But then up there he says about Latinas that they played me every time. So I don't know at the moment. They kind of contradict each other in a way. Because up there he responds to Yeo saying thoughts on Latinas. David says they've played me every time, so I don't know at the moment. But before, months ago, he says basically he only rizzes up white girls because he's responded to Log saying that Log rizzes up Latinas, but David saying I only rizz up white girls. So they just contradict each other. I mean, he's a liar. I feel like he just says things, they're not even true. Now, I think, let me take that back. I think it is true about him talking about like Latinas playing him every time. Not that they actually played him, but in his head, probably thinking they play him because that is the type of girls he goes after, not white girls. So I don't know why he said about the white girl thing. But now he's saying, I want a white girl from Ohio. I don't know. David I feel like he's a liar. And deleted user says, "David, want to bully kids on Roblox with me? I want a black man." And Sophia says, "Kylie is white, black, and from Ohio, Tennessee." And deleted user says LMFAO and says, "Bro, message me first, acting interested, then ignores me. How do I live? I need to effing paint." So now we're at April 27th, 2025. 8:50 p.m. So remember, April 27th, 2025 is 4 days after the murder. He would be in Houston that night when he does that live show where it's broadcasted live. Because remember, on the 24th, he has the album release party, and then the 25th, he does that pop-up band lab, and he sings acoustic Afterlife and cries. And then the 27th, he goes to Houston, sings Afterlife again there and cries. Just to put it into perspective, like, what's going on at that time. So that's what's going on. Okay, back to the Discord messages. The cat says, "I feel offended." And May says, "You are a loved mod." A says, "No, David just knows who Kylie is because of the past." And the cat says, "Not a single thanks." And deleted user says, "I did say thanks." And A says, "No, David just knows who Kylie is because of the past." And deleted user says, "Shh, shh." Sophia says, "Her simp era." And deleted user says, "I did say thanks." And the cat says, "I know, I'm just making you look horrible, hee hee." And deleted user says, "Nah, because he said no on stream, but then DM me saying he was playing." So that's to be Kylie, right? And May says, "Dude, so lucky that he knows who you are." And deleted user says, "No one needs to know the past." And A says, "Leaf." And deleted user says, "Shh." And the cat says, "Mommy." In response to the deleted user saying no one needs to know the past, Sophia says, "Girl, we know. Hey, guys." May says, "Guys, he's going on." And deleted user says, "No." And in response to her saying no one needs to know the past, May says, "What's this so-called past?" And in response to Cat saying, "Mommy," deleted user says, "No, he said, 'Thank you, Mom,' all derogatorily." In response to May saying, "What's the so-called past?" deleted user says, "No, no one tell. I'm banning anybody who tells." And Toxic says, "FM." Benji says, And no problem or no. May says, I need to know. The cat says, Kylie almost converted David back from asexual. For real. And deleted user says, oh, I remember that. And the cat says, bro was simping so bad. And May says, what? So here's one of those context clues where you could tell that this deleted user right here is Kylie. Because the cat says, Kylie almost converted David back from asexual. Deleted user, which is Kylie in this one, says, no, I did not stop spreading that. See how you could tell this one's Kylie then? So I wonder what kind of past they were talking about. I mean, if you go through their Discord back in 2023 and then they talk about it in the current time, well, in 2025, there's something that went on between her and David, whether it was just all like internet relationship, but it was like they had something. And then people were saying, oh, you made David not asexual. Like he was asexual, then something happened between Kylie and David, and then he became not asexual, is what they were saying. But I never believed that David was asexual to begin with, to be honest. And then also saying, like, oh, she doesn't want to talk about the past and like she's going to ban anybody that brings it up. Like, what happened between these two? Could she be another victim of David's in some way? And she feels ashamed and like it's her fault, because sometimes victims will be made to feel like they did something wrong. So it makes me wonder why, like if that's why she's so like weird about anybody that knows about whatever happened between them, about them saying it to anybody. Okay, so let's continue reading. May says, oh my God. And Sophia says, please. And deleted Judah says, no. And the cat says, explain it. Sophia says, a screenshot. The cat says, censored. And then in response to the Kylie almost converting David back from asexual, Ben says, I can confirm I've seen proof. Sophia says, huh? And deleted user says, I'm banning all of y'all. And Sophia says, I'll delete it. And deleted user says, man. The cat, in response to Ben saying, I can confirm I've seen proof, the cat says, I just made that up. Stop. Sophia says, I've been here for years. And May says, guys, this is such a you had to be there moment that I wasn't there for. And the cat says, I just made that up. Stop. Ben says, no, you didn't. May says, guys, this is such a you had to be there moment that I wasn't there for. A says, it was terrible, but you brought back my spark. Ben says, I wasn't there either. A says it was terrible. Deleted user says horrible. A says sleep in the dark without you. Deleted user says, imagine David cries while singing Afterlife again. And Anthony says, I've been here since a certain Maddie incident. So Maddie is another one. If you go back in the Discord messages, I think from 2023, she might go as far back as 2022. Her and David had something going on. I mean, I think they started out as friends, and then she was the admin or mod or whatever on his Discord. But you could tell they have some kind of something together. So I wonder what the incident is, though. Like, are these two people that were David's victims, like Maddie and Kylie, that when they were too afraid to say anything? If you guys go check out my playlist, I have these Discord pre-records that I made where I read a lot more than what's here. And you could see like what I'm talking about with Maddie and Kylie. I'll try to remember to link them in the description. But check out my David/Celeste Rivas Hernandez case playlist. I have a lot of videos. And I have a lot where I read a lot of the Discord. Okay, back to reading the Discord. And Ben says, God forbid a man cry, shaking my head. And in response to Kat saying that she just made that up, stop, deleted user says, nah, he's lying. In response to Ben saying, I wasn't there either, May says, okay, so at least I'm not alone. Deleted user says, we all saw it. Anthony says, I've been here since a certain Maddie incident. And A says, Maddie or Maddie? And then in response to Ben saying, God forbid a man cry, deleted user says, there's none wrong with it. I'm just saying. In response to A saying Maddie or Maddie, Anthony says, don't remember, but she was rude. And then in response to May saying, okay, at least I'm not alone, Ben says, you just got to go with the flow and agree with anything that's against Kylie. So it sounds like they're saying that Kylie and Maddie didn't like each other. And I wonder if it's because of David. They were jealous of each other because they each had their own little relationship with David. Anthony says, never forgot it, though. A says, probably Maddie. Anthony says, I remember David being actually alive back then. And then in response to Ben saying about going with the flow and agree with anything against Kylie, May says, wait, but I like Kylie. She's cool. And Anthony says, some days. in response to May saying, I like Kylie. Ben says, no, you don't. Okay, so I'm going to stop here for this video, but I am going to make more like this, so keep your eye out. Let me know in the comments what you think about some of the stuff that I had brought up in response to some of these messages. I'm curious to what you guys think. All right, have a good one. Bye.